meatheads. Andrew Bagley at Bagley Farms Meat Market. We're going to start doing some informational videos for our customers. We get a lot of questions about where our product comes from, what products we use in certain ground beef, etc. So just to try to educate everybody a little bit and kind of let them know how we do things here, we're going to start doing some videos periodically and try to explain how we go through the process back here in the cutting room. To start the series out, we're going to start out with our ground beef. We carry 3 different kinds of ground beef. We carry a 85-15, which is a ground chuck. We carry a 90-10, which is a ground round. And then we have our steak blend, which is closer to a 75-25. It's got a higher fat content. They all come from 3 different sources. They're not commingled, so I'm going to go through a little bit today about where those all come from. So our ground round is made from a beef knuckle. So a knuckle is also known as a sirloin tip. Even though it's called a sirloin, it technically comes from the round. A portion of, when they split the round from the loin, a portion of the sirloin tip also stays on the sirloin side. That's also called the ball tip, for people that might be familiar with that. But we use the knuckles. It's a pretty tender cut of meat for coming from the round. It's also a relatively lean cut of meat. That's why we use it for our ground rounds. So we both have the tenderness aspect as well as the leanness aspect. To make our ground round, take our knuckle, simply cut it into pieces. This one actually has a decent amount of marbling in it for a knuckle, but nonetheless still going to be significantly leaner than if we used a bottom round flat or an inside round, or otherwise known as a top round. So we just cut these into pieces small enough for our grinder to handle. And you'll notice that the meat has a little bit of maybe a dark color to it. It isn't that bright red. That's because it hasn't been exposed to oxygen long enough for the myoglobin and the oxygen to react with each other and give it that bright bloomed look. So we've got it cut down into pieces that are small enough for a grinder to handle. Put it in the grinder. We run everything through our ground beef plate twice. You'll see here as it comes out. So our first run, and you'll see that ground beef still has just a little bit of a dark color to it. Again, not enough chance to react with the oxygen for it to bloom. Put it back in the grinder for second go. I always turn on the mix paddle for just a little bit to make sure that I get that fat and lean mixed up consistently. So that way when we put it in the tray, we don't have globs of fat, globs of lean. And so we let it mix for just a couple seconds here. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. The grinder also does a great job of blending things together as it runs through and out the screen. And you'll notice as it comes out that second time, it's really starting to get that red, bright, vibrant color that you're used to seeing in our case. We'll fill the tray. And now I'll show you how we go about making our 85-15 ground chuck. So we use chuck clods. This muscle comes off of the top of the shoulder blade on the right-hand side of the shoulder, or left-hand side of the shoulder, whichever side it might be, composed of several different muscles. Muscles that do a lot of work, muscles that are tougher muscles. There's a lot of connective tissue, there's a lot of sinew inside, and these are all things that if you just cut this across on the bias, let's say like so, you can see there's some connective tissue right here, a little bit of fat on the bottom, different muscles. Those are muscles that really do a lot of work in transporting and making the animal mobile. So what do we do with something like this? Well, running it through the grinder and through a plate and a knife is the best way to make this more palatable and make it more edible for the consumer. You'll see here that there is a decent amount of marbling inside here. That's why it's an 85-15 instead of the 90-10 like the knuckle. You'll notice it was a little bit leaner. So we'll use the chuck clods. Again, same thing, just cut this into pieces that are manageable for the grinder, and we will run it through. It will be the exact same process as the ground round. These chuck clods, you'll notice as I cut through this, there are areas like right here, this intermuscular fat it's called, in between the muscles, can be pretty big deposits of fat. That's why I'll let it run in the grinder on the mix after the first cycle just a little bit longer to make sure we get that all mixed up good and we have a consistent product all the way through. So we'll run our chuck clods through the grinder the first time, just like we did our knuckle, and get the first round out of the way. Now, as you can see, when you look at this in this lug, there's a spot here that has a lot of fat. And you can see a spot right here that's more lean. So just like I said, you get those bigger pieces of fat that go through and you're gonna have that. We'll throw it in, let the grinder give it a couple tumbles, make it more consistent product all the way through. Once again, just like the round, exposure to the air, and this product has really bloomed out nicely compared to where it was at before. You'll notice that the tray's a little fuller with the ground chuck than it is the ground round. But you can clearly see there's a pretty significant difference here. This one's a little bit lighter pink, more of the fat flecks that are spread throughout, as opposed to the 90-10 ground round, a little bit less fat. The ground round is wonderful for people who are perhaps a little more health conscious, want to eat a little bit leaner product. It's great for making your chilies, taco meats, that type of stuff. Most people will drain the fat off of them. So if you're going that route, there's no sense in paying for the fat if you're going to drain it off anyhow. So when we make chili at our house, we use ground round. We use it for taco meat. It works great for that. Or also somebody that wants a leaner burger on the grill. The ground chuck, excellent for hamburgers. Some people do use it in their chilies that they don't drain the fat off. They want that flavor. They want that layer of fat on top of the chili. They think it's fantastic. That's also a personal preference, but those are what it works well for. Also works well for your lasagnas, those type of things that you want a little bit of extra flavor, extra fat from. All of our ground beef is ground fresh daily, essentially. We may grind some late in the afternoon and still be there in the morning, but it's almost always been ground within 24 hours and oftentimes within 3 or 4 hours. We'll go through 3 to 4 trays of this ground chuck a day. So we take a lot of pride in the fact that it's very fresh. When you buy our ground beef, sometimes you may open it up and the middle will be dark and you'll think, this ground beef's old. Why are they selling this? If it's got a dark center to it, which I can't exhibit right now because we just ground it, but that muscles inside that aren't getting access to oxygen right now, they will revert back to that darker, more purplish color that the whole muscle cuts had to begin with. So if you see that, that's actually a pretty good sign that it's relatively fresh. If you start seeing it being dark or gray on the outside, then that's when ground beef's been sitting around a while. We don't have many problems with, actually we don't have any problems with that. We move our ground beef fast enough that fortunately we keep it pretty fresh. But those are just a couple things, housekeeping things to go through. Our third grind that we do is our steak blend. Our steak blend is composed of all of our trimmings off of our steaks, obviously. Ribeyes, we do a lot of ribeye trim. The majority of it is actually filet trim. So fillets come in a whole tenderloin, and ribeyes, fillets, these are all things that we'll do videos on in the future as well. So hold tight and we'll be able to explain some of those. But it's all the trimmings, majority filet, some strips, and some sirloin. I don't have any available right now. We ground that fresh this morning earlier, and so my apologies, but exactly the same consistency, and you'll notice even a few more white flecks in it because the filet trim really does have a lot of fat in it. But my wife won't eat a burger made of anything hardly anymore if it's not the steak blend. That's would be my biggest recommendation for the steak blend is to use pretty much strictly for burgers. I know people that use it in spaghettis and chilies, that type of stuff, just because they think it has a better flavor, and it does. I used to be a ground beef is ground beef guy until I had steak blend burgers, and it is a whole world of difference, that's for certain. So anyhow, that's kind of how we do our ground beef. If anybody has any questions, by all means, feel free to reach out, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks a lot.